Yeah, except it's in Portland, man. We're a Washington State show, and we jokingly say Portland's dead to us. But
welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
all right, folks, welcome back to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My guest today is Eric Phillips with Schilling Cider. Eric, I'm going to let you say what your official job title is because, we'll go from there. But you went to Linfield. I'm on your LinkedIn. You went to Linfield University.
Yeah, it's now actually when I went. This will date me, but when I went, it was called Linfield College.
Well, when I went to college, it was Linfield College. So yeah, it's like okay. So back in the day, I didn't go there, but sports wise, you guys played Central Washington University, so that's how I know the name. So anyway,
played some rugby against them, and good times.
See, we didn't have rugby back then, so that's cool that they brought rugby in. That's all right. Well,
it was great.
We're not here to talk college athletics, but we could, I guess. But anyway, Eric, so you're with Schilling Cider. Why don't you give our audience just like the quick and dirty overview of what your job title is, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks again for the invite, and we're really excited just to be able to tell people more about Schilling Cider in general, and super pleased to be here. So my official title these days is Chief Commercial Officer. I had to think about that. So I'm the Chief Commercial Officer. So I oversee our sales and marketing departments, those two verticals. And, kind of my day-to-day is a lot of different things, but really, is to take out the roadblocks for the rest of our team so they can be successful in their roles. That's a lot of what I view my role as doing, is trying to connect the dots and help take out any roadblocks so people in the company can be successful and support them in their growth within the company as well.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about you first, and we'll transition into Schilling. How did you start your career with Schilling? Great
question. I started, I think it's got to be 8 or 9 years now. I'd have to look on the calendar, but I won't waste our time doing that. I started actually at the cider house. So through some mutual friends, so some people from Linfield, and in a personal relationship I was in at that time, I started meeting some different people who had different connections to Schilling Cider. And through that, I worked at this restaurant down in South Lake Union, helped them open it up. And then kind of through that connection, some people who were familiar with Schilling came in. The two co-founders at different times had come into the restaurant. I never made exact connections with them. But then I saw this job posting. So I was a public school teacher. That's what my first career was. I was a public school Spanish teacher. And then, I wanted to see what else was available. So I did this restaurant thing and started kind of making these connections. And then I saw this job posting and I applied for it. And I was totally didn't have the skill set, totally underqualified, not even under, just completely not qualified for the job. I applied anyway, right? As anyone listening, you should definitely do that from time to time because it worked out for me.
Well, and what's the worst that's going to happen?
Totally.
Yeah. All right.
Hey, that's exactly it, right? They can say no. Like they're already saying no by you not applying, right?
Right.
So I applied for this job, and it was for an assistant cider maker position. And I had made cider on my own with my college roommate and after college. And we were having a good time with that. So I said, what the heck? I don't know where they're at. Let's try and figure this out. So I went in for an interview. And, I just told them, I said, hey, here are my samples. And we tried them out. And they were nice enough to try them and, comment on a couple of them. Like, yeah, these are good. I was like, okay, that's great. You guys do this as a profession. And I just said, hey, I'm going to be really honest with you. It's kind of my MO. I just said, I'm not qualified for this job, but I'm excited about your guys' company. I'm excited about this. But I also know that you have a job, or not a job opening. You have a cider house that you're opening that hasn't opened up yet. I'm actually qualified for that. Are there any openings? And one of the first things, and this kind of goes into, probably we'll dive into this later, but it was kind of my first understanding of the foundational, who Schilling is as a company, who the company is, the company culture and that kind of thing. It started that day, actually, my first day. And I remember very clearly, Colin Schilling, the co-founder, said, "Hey, actually, I'm not hiring for that. Our GM is." And I went, "Okay, he's already delegated. He already believes that this person's the right person for that job. That person's hiring." So the next day, I think, or the day after, I was in touch with that person, and that person hired me on the spot to be the assistant general manager.
Okay.
And I was like, "All right, I am in. Like this, I'm gonna figure this out."
Mm-hmm.
So help that person open up the cider house in Fremont. So we have 2 locations now. We have the 32 tap cider house in Fremont,
okay,
and we have the 50 tap cider house down in Portland. I would encourage anyone who is at all interested or even has thought about trying cider to go there first. They're the largest tap houses of cider in the nation, like maybe the world. I've been to a couple other places, but they don't have 50 taps of cider, and it's just cider and gluten-free menus. So
okay,
that's helpful for people.
Yeah,
so
except
anyway,
it's in Portland, man. We're a Washington State show, and we jokingly say Portland's dead to us, but
that's fair.
We'll give you a pass. You know, come on, we'll give you a pass.
You can take the train. I mean, the train is beautiful. I will say that.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
All right.
Fremont, go to Fremont. us Washingtonians will go to Fremont.
Go to Fremont, folks.
Fremont's great. So on that note, I applied for that job, get hired. We opened the cider house in Fremont, and then through a couple different transitions, I said, "Hey, I want to grow with the company," and so I became. I'll just list it off so I won't bore everyone. But then I was after the AGM at the cider house, I was a sales rep in the Washington market, and then I moved to Texas for 6 months to get the state launched. And then I came back and took over more of sales, and then I took over marketing as well. So that's where we are today.
Well, so one question that, I mean, besides teasing you about Portland, which I can't do, that's just, that's not fair. But you said you went to Texas. So how many states is Schilling currently selling cider in?
Yeah, we're in about 20 states. I always say we do a bulk of our business in less than that, but we're excited about the investment that we have in those markets and the long-term growth opportunities.
Okay. Is Washington State your largest market?
It is, yeah. Okay. Washington State's our largest market. Actually, if you break down cider and you look at the dollar sales data that's available through Nielsen or available through IRI, to syndicated sourcing avenues, you will see that Washington per capita is the highest cider, and then it's Oregon. Actually, the Pacific Northwest, basically, I don't want to get too into the weeds on it, but the Pacific Northwest has the largest cider consumption by dollars spent in the entire nation. So it's, kind of the cider mecca.
Okay. All right. So you've had this journey to now you're the chief commercial officer, and your job is to get, knock down roadblocks for everybody, because there's no roadblocks in business, man. It's all easy. And there's, there's no bureaucracies you have to deal with, and I kid and all that. So let's talk about Schilling Cider. How did that start? Because the name is kind of a familiar name. So there's a little, I think, a historical, a family lineage there. But how did Schilling get started? And let's talk about the journey there. Yeah, absolutely. So Colin Schilling, his great-great-grandfather. So Colin Schilling is the co-founder with Mark Corneye. And I'll tell you about their story here in a second, but we're going to go back a couple decades. So in 1886, centuries, man, that's a couple centuries, not decades.
You got my joke. So in 1886, Colin's great-great-grandfather, August Schilling, started the Schilling Spice Company. Wow. And he, I know some of the stories, not a ton of them, but at one point, he actually worked with A.J. Folgers from Folgers Coffee.
Okay.
They split ways, and they did their different things. And the basis, as I understand it, is August Schilling wanted to create high-quality product, spices, at a consumer-friendly price point. And that's a lot of, we also, talk about that, too, where we're at as a company. Mm-hmm. And so, fast forward, so Colin, had made cider probably before he could legally drink it.
No.
In Idaho, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you get it. And so in Idaho, he grew up and he was making cider as, for gifts and as a hobby and that kind of thing. And then he went to Willamette, down in a state that won't be named, I guess, on this podcast.
Oregon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Voldemort, right? Down there, he went to Willamette, and then so did Mark Cornay, and that's where they met. They met in college, in grad school, and then they, one of the other key members, one of the other owners, also met in grad school, and so Mark and Colin founded the company in like kind of April-ish of 2013.
Okay.
And they started it in their garage, in their place in Queen Anne that they were renting. They started there, and you can actually you can see from Fremont, basically that house, the Fremont facility, which is really cool. So that's where the business started. And then there was a production facility prior to the one that we're currently in, which is our main headquarters, about a mile away, like less than about a half mile away, and started there. And then we just expanded into this space. And, a note on it, I think is kind of interesting is I think there's sometimes you can name something because you're egotistical. The reason that it was Schilling Cider at that point, because the name in grocery was familiar, and there was an easy route to market, and Colin would be the first one to tell you, he's like, dude, if we did it again, I would not put my name on it. But here we are, and we're excited about it. And I think it's, again, a testament to who we are as a company and what we're doing. So,
well, it's interesting you say that though, because there is that, you hear the name and you're like, I know that there's something rattling around in my brain, and I don't know what it was. And then I was like, oh, okay. So there actually was a family connection going way, way back.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because you talk with a certain generation, right? And they are very familiar with the Schilling spices. And then other people, you get a blank stare and you go McCormick, and they go, oh, and well, Schilling sold to McCormick, and they actually kept that red that's known as Schilling Red.
Right.
Yeah.
So what you said, the three that we'll call the three guys all met at college. So did they start this company without any real work experience, real business experience prior to starting this company?
So I left out a probably important portion there on two fronts. One is, so there are four of us. I am thankfully included in that conversation. I joined about 6 months after the third person, Ian. And in a very different role, but they worked at some corporate jobs, which I will not badmouth, but ones that we would most be familiar with.
Sure.
And then were very tired of that and recognized that this was not a path forward for them. So they had worked for, a finite amount of time, and then basically said, hey, this is what we went to grad school for, entrepreneurial business, sustainable business. Let's take a crack at it. And then with some convincing, so Mark and Colin co-founded it, and then with some convincing, they looped in Ian, one of the other guys, and pulled him out of his corporate, cushy job, and then, I worked my way into the equation over time.
So it's the reason I'm asking is it's always interesting to me what the path is that people take to get to entrepreneurship, and I would have been a little surprised, frankly, if they wouldn't have done some time in corporate. It's almost some time like it was a finite sentence or something But yeah, I mean, I think people that really understand that, this corporate gig, sure, salary's nice, bennies are great, and it's not, I'm not getting anything emotional. Yeah. And so I'd rather go and work, because I'm sure these guys are only working part-time now. They probably only work on Tuesdays for a couple of hours. They're probably, you guys are all probably working, one of my friends, and he didn't originate this saying, but, somebody goes, oh yeah, I've got I work, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And he popped up and goes, yeah, I remember my first part-time job. Yeah. So, so we started this in 2013.
Yep.
So you're on your way to a decade.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've moved a couple of times. So you're okay. So the facility that you're in now, how big a facility are you guys in from a production standpoint?
Yeah. Well, from a production standpoint, technically speaking, we talk about certain things. We talk about it in certain ways for certain people, and you get it, right? Square footage, we have, we're currently in 36,000 square feet, which is I have no context of that. So I tell people I start at one end, I could sprint, get to full speed twice, that's about it for me. I'm not a fast guy, but that's where I'm at. So that's 36,000 square feet in technical terms, as I understand it. Right.
Right.
And then we're actually getting the back of the building in later this year in a couple months. And we'll have access to that. And that's about almost 90,000 square feet. Yeah. So some big expansion happening this year. We're really excited about it. We currently have some stuff that's stored, across the street, and we'd like to be able to handle our business ourselves and not have to worry about other people, so we're excited to bring that all in-house.
So you guys are going to be over 100,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of square footage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the technical sprinting equation to that one, but I'll let you know. I'll follow up with you when we get that backspace.
I think they call that a half marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of, well, I used to work. So in the 90s, I worked at Starbucks corporate.
Okay.
So the Starbucks Center down in Soto, right? And that building, each of those floors is 110,000 square feet. So I've got pretty good context of that's a lot of square footage, man. That's wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be exciting. And, with that expansion comes more tanks. We're trying, really, as we've expanded, I think there's an important conversation because I think that, sometimes you can be not associated as a craft brand. Well, you can expand sustainably and still maintain those craft roots. And it's not even maintain, it's perpetuate. It's, proselytize, if you will, like talk about it, and that's the exciting thing about us is, we're still doing the same thing, but better and just a little bit bigger,
Right. Yeah. You guys got a pretty extensive line of products, and we're going to talk product, of course. So
I trust you.
Yeah, we'll get there. I'm on your website, and it's kind of scrolling by, which is catching my eye sometimes. Like, okay, so I'm gonna move that so it doesn't keep scratching. Okay. So when they started, back when they launched commercially, how much product did they have? How many SKUs did they launch with? Do you know?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Okay.
No, I was in about 6 months after the company started. I think I could be totally wrong, but we started with Schilling Original, and it was a hopped cider.
Okay.
It was a dry hopped cider, dry hopped and a dry cider. So a dry hop cider. That's confusing. Okay. And we started with Schilling Original, and then we also had one that was called Schilling Oak Aged, where we actually had oak chips essentially, in the liquid as it was fermenting, and would pull some really great flavors out of it, almost more along the lines of like an oak Chardonnay. Okay. But without the buttery characteristics, which some people don't like. And then we had a ginger cider, and it was with it was really fun because I didn't know this beforehand, but there are many different types of ginger, and of course there are many different types of ginger.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, right. But you think about it now, you're like, yeah, that just makes sense. Of course, there's more than one type of ginger.
I wouldn't have thought of that. Ginger, I just think ginger. Okay.
Yeah. So those were the 3 releases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know why they started with those versus just, a plain old hard apple cider, just, not.
Yeah. So
not hopped, not aged, not ginger.
Yeah. So the original wasn't advertised as a hop cider at the beginning. And so it was just advertised as like a dry cider, but it had some more fun characteristics and a little bit better mouthfeel than a lot of stuff at that time. We're talking 9-10 years ago when cider was having another resurgence. There were some products that existed and then from some legacy brands at major corporate, beverage companies. And, the real, I'll answer the question that the start, the scale up was from Boston Beer. They released Angry Orchard, right? Boston Beer of Truly and of Twisted Tea and, Sam Adams, all those brands, right? Had launched Angry Orchard. And so you had this easier access to people for consumers, right? Now cider was on all the shelves, right? Well, at that same time, there were some other companies, ourselves included, that were releasing ciders. Most of them were in bottle. We were the first cider in cans on the West Coast.
Okay.
And so I think part of that strategy was what is different about our cider to gain a shelf placement. Because if you're not on the shelf, it doesn't matter how good your cider is, right? Unfortunately, that's just where we're at.
No, that's just, it's reality.
And so, the original had that, it was different enough from the dry ciders or the semi-sweet ciders that were out there, right? And then the oak aged, nothing else existed in oak aged or in ginger at that point. So those are two new entrants to the category. And we were looking at that point, there was a lot more connotation or connectedness with the wine business,
right,
than there was with craft beer. Right, or a separate category, cider. Yeah, there was no cider category. It was like, well, it's kind of like wine made from apples. Great, it goes here. So that's kind of why that choice was made.
Yeah, I've heard that from other cider makers that that have been around for more than just last week. That at first it was placed with wine because it's made out of apples and it's fermented. Yeah, it's wine.
And technically it's taxed as wine, right? Like it's taxed as an apple wine. There's
okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Okay, but that's a good point.
There's a lot of funky stuff there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because if your ABV is a little too high, doesn't it get taxed as champagne? Doesn't it pop up into another?
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. Honestly, I nerd out on it all the time. People are like,
yes, but let's be real. The minute we start saying, okay, now we're going to talk about taxes, everyone's going, next episode. So we'll spare everybody that, but okay.
Cut it off.
So they start with those three, and how was it getting it on the shelves? Because cider wasn't everywhere back in 2013. It wasn't, now you walk into any establishment, Safeway, Albertsons, Fred Meyer, bottle shops, you've got lots of choices. You didn't have those back then.
Yeah, it was definitely, so I didn't have the first experience in selling it into stores because I was over at the cider house. I can tell you that there's definitely at that point, and there still obviously exists to a much greater degree through education and, thankfully consumers putting their dollars there, a very interested contingent, like a group of people who were just super pumped on cider. Okay. And it was thanks to, in part, one of them was, and thanks to this gentleman named Alan Shapiro, who started with some other people, the cider summits. And in Seattle, so there's 4 a year. There's one in Seattle. There's one in a large city in a state that will not be named. One in the Bay Area, and then one in Chicago. Okay. And I'd recommend if people are excited about cider to check those out. So when we opened the cider house, right, there was a line around the block. There was a literal line for a block of people waiting to get in because it coincided with the cider summit.
Oh, okay.
And we did that intentionally, obviously.
Yeah, that makes sense, though. That makes sense.
So, there was a group of people that were excited about it. And then there were people that were vocal about, getting cider in stores, having more access to it. At the beginning, it was trying to figure out where cider goes. Then it was trying to figure out, well, we already have a cider. We don't need two. It's like, okay. So there was an education piece there that needed to happen. So thankfully, there were some, stores like PCC and Whole Foods and Met Market, some local stores and the Red Apples and the Northwest Grocers were open to it, right? They had availability. They were willing to create space on their shelves for cider. Then once we got some traction there, we were very lucky and I think the harder you work, the luckier you get. Mm-hmm. But we were able to get into some Kroger banners, being QFC and Fred Meyer. And once that started to pick up momentum. And then cider had created a space that was dedicated to its craft on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. Did you start canning immediately? Mm-hmm. So you guys launched with cans?
Absolutely, yeah. That's So we were the first on the West Coast to launching cans, and that had its own hurdles, obviously, right?
Well, from what I've been told, I've heard there's some challenges with canning and cider, but okay. So you guys started So I think the thing is that I think a lot of ciders at first, and this is just my interpretation, a lot of them were in glass. So, well, we'll put it next to wine. Not that beer doesn't come in glasses, but beer's got cans. And the minute you put it in cans, now all of a sudden they're like, well, we can put it next to beer. And I wonder if that made it for the layman who's grabbing a 6-pack on Friday night. Well, let's try this out, versus, I'm not into wine, so I'm not going to go even look at what's this cider stuff over next to the Chardonnays because I don't drink wine, so I don't care.
Yeah.
But if I'm, walking through Safeway, I might grab a 6-pack of these cans. I might even think they're beer, for example. I might just quickly grab and make a mistake and go, oh, this is really cool. So. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And a couple of reasons we went into cans, and one of them, the main one, was being sustainability, right? That aluminum is almost, not infinitely, but very, very recyclable, and it takes less energy than glass. It also weighs less for shipping, right? So there's a lot of, important reasons for going to cans. It also holds up better in cans, despite what people, their myths that they hold to be truths. The degradation from light, just the same as beer, it happens the same way in cider and glass. I'm not saying that happens overnight or it's bad to put it in glass. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you are UV protected in a different way than you are in glass, right? And there's also, how do you differentiate yourself, right, from what's happening? And actually, I'm not gonna lie, like, it hurt us in the beginning being in cans. Like, it was not like it accelerated our growth because we were in cans. That was another battle that we had to fight, another conversation we had to have, another way to convince them of, hey, actually cans have a higher quality than glass. So we really had to educate, and we had to educate for literally years on why, right? Probably up until about 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now you start with 3. What's the company's, I'm not asking you to give away company secrets here, but how does the company go about deciding how to bring a new cider to market? What's that creative process like?
Yeah, a couple different ways. And I think it's evolved over time, obviously, where before it was, throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. But now it's, I think we have a little bit better process in place, and I like to think so. At least we've worked to incorporate that into our growth and our scalability. One really fun thing is the cider houses are a data center, essentially, right? I mean, if you think about it, you go in, what sells the best? Okay, well, the other thing that's really cool about the cider houses is we have our taps. We don't have all the taps. One of the really big things that we're proponents for is growing cider as a whole category. Because if they win, we win. And if we win, they win, right? There's just all boats rise, right? And so looking at the cider houses, we'll put something on, or someone else will have something on that sells like crazy. Now we can go in and be like, all right, great. Let's investigate that. Let's learn more about that. Why are people drinking that? And so that's a good starting point for us. So, and then outside of that, we'll look at data, but data's like taxes. No one wants to hear about that.
Right. So one of the questions I love to ask people, and you're probably going to hate it at first, but I think you'll play along. You had to have a flop somewhere.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So what were some of those flops? And I asked that not to be, I think we learned from it when we're like, well, I thought this, jalapeno and coffee blend would be good.
I was, you did tell me we talked about coffee.
Yeah.
So I'll jump into that one. So I have all the cans kind of lining my office here, and it's fun to look at it and be like, oh, I can't believe we made that,
Yeah.
Or I actually had our head cider maker came in. It was just yesterday, honestly, and he came in and he goes, Eric, do you remember what this was called back then? And I really had to rack my brain. And I was like, oh yeah, wow, we made that. Like, what were we thinking? Which is fun. It's so fun because you have to take it's cliche, but you got to take those risks, because
sure,
But one of them, not so much. So yes, failure in one sense, but also so successful in another sense that it's so polarizing that we no longer make it. One of those was a Nitro cold brew coffee cider. That's a lot to unpack. I recognize that.
Now that sounds amazing to me. So,
Totally.
I mean, to me, I'd be like totally into that.
Yeah. So it was awesome. Just from a technological standpoint, to be able to do that, because you have to have, proteins to bind the you've got your carbonation, you got your nitrogen. So to bind, so you actually get that smooth pour, right?
Right.
So we actually figured out, Mark Corney, co-founder, kind of took this project on, and Colin, and they're working on this, and theoretically this could work, and let's figure it out. And that's one of the fun things that's really allowed us to scale, is just everyone's excitement about what they do. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but this coffee was called Grumpy Bear.
Okay, which I would personally love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of things in the win column, right?
Right.
When people tried it, they either loved it or they hated it, and there was no in between, and there was no middle ground. There was no middle ground, and so we made it. It was more difficult to make, and it was not for everyone, and it didn't really have a space, in the chain stores, in the large grocery, right?
Right.
So it was a cult favorite, and I still get people. I met this guy down in Texas, and he'll still show me cans. I'm like, dude, that's probably not good. You probably shouldn't drink that. And he's like, no, it's great. I'm like, I don't know, man. If you die, like, I'm gonna feel really bad. But I told you not to drink that about 5 times. He's like, no, I still got some. I'm like, all right, man. Like, I clearly cannot stop you from enjoying this cider, but so successful on one side and less on the other, and so that's I think one of the more fun ones to talk about. I'm sure we had some other ones too.
I want to interject on so the fact that you said coffee, I had no clue that somebody would try that. So when I first started working at Starbucks, I think it was like a hazing prank. They gave me this bottle of this Starbucks product called Mazatgran.
Okay.
And it was a coffee cola.
Oh, okay.
And it was, and they go, here, try this. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And they're all like watching me, waiting for me like to, throw up or, and I like this stuff. And it was Starbucks' first foray partnership with Pepsi.
Okay.
And so they made this African inspired, I can't remember the whole story. Anyway, the bottom line was it was either you liked it or you hated it.
Yeah.
And I would find, so this people were selling it on eBay.
Oh yeah.
It had this cult, like, it was just bizarre. So it kind of sounds like a very similar path to what you guys are trying with coffee and cider. That's okay. Yeah,
we made one on draft that was actually 2 other really fun ones, and who knows what we'll do long term. The sky's the limit sometimes. But we made a chocolate nitro cider.
Okay.
So it had, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it had Theo chocolate in it, because we're just down the street in the great Fremont neighborhood, right? I'm plugging Washington more because of the chat size. Yeah, I got you. And then we also had we made a Sriracha lime cider. And it was actual bottles of Sriracha in there blended in with the cider. And I think I can't remember. It was fun. It was good enough. Some people loved it. They would come in and get full 16-ounce pints and get another pint. And I was like, I don't know how they're doing this. And that was I swear to you, they get growlers of it to go. And we had it on draft for forever, until several years ago. But it was a Sriracha lime cider, and people loved it. And they're like, oh yeah, it's like a spicy nacho. Like, I don't know, man. You do you, but
yeah, I mean, see. Okay, I'm geeking out thinking the coffee thing sounds good, and and I'm kind of making faces with the Sriracha lime. So let's be real, but
to each their own, I guess.
To each their own, yeah. So how do you guys nowadays? What's the process? I mean, you've got all this data coming in from the tap rooms. I get that, but so let's just arbitrarily assign a new product you're going to do. I'm just going to make up stuff. A blackberry infused cider. Let's just decide that.
Yeah.
So what's the process from taking it from, hey, let's make a blackberry type cider, to getting it? I mean, are you launching them first at the tap room to see kind of how they're received locally in real time versus canning it and distributing it?
Yeah, generally, in a perfect world, we're able to assess the viability of it. We also, there's a lot of data out there on, the sales side of things, so we can look at other things and look at it from that standpoint. But, I think for us, we will definitely trial stuff at the cider houses, and that's a great place to get, the first of the first, and we'll call it something else down the road, but you've tried the first iteration, right? But we're also trying to do things that other people aren't doing, right? Mm-hmm. And I recognize, that sometimes that's not possible, right? A dry cider is a dry cider is a dry cider. Sure, but is it? It's just the same way that a rosé is different depending on the things that go in it, right? The ingredients. Right. And so I think that's a lot of it for us is, okay, let's do it the way that we want to do it. And that's not to say other ways aren't also totally great, but I think we've done a great job through culture building and through just creating this foundation for the company is looking at things that might not seem possible, but figuring out a way to make it happen. For example, we did some data digging, right? And we said, okay, well, why is this happening in the world of cider? We started to assess it, and then we said, you know what? No one is doing this. No one is creating a higher ABV, right? Alcohol by volume, a stronger, if you will, cider. It's all capped at, and we won't get into taxes, but I'll tell you a little bit. It's all capped at about 6.9%.
Right.
Why is that? Well, there's tax implications above that. Okay. And then there's also people talk about why does this fruit cider cost more? Again, further tax implications on fruited ciders. Yeah. So anytime you put, and I promise I'll answer your question, anytime you put even a drop, right? Or even, you don't even have to put anything in the liquid. Just alluding to there being a fruit other than apple or pear, right? So cider or perry, right, as it's called, you are in a different tax bracket.
Okay, so we're just going to go into the tax bracket thing because actually it's kind of geeky and
you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. So what my understanding, my very layman's understanding was that above a certain alcohol content was taxed differently. I've never heard that fruit increased taxes. Can you, other than just because they want to, but why is that?
Honestly, a lot of these cider laws they come from wine, right? Well, there will say this, there are not specific cider laws necessarily. They're all based on wine laws. And so you are taxed as a fruit wine if you put fruit other than apple or pear into a cider. And it's just archaic laws. And there's reasons to change it, there's reasons not to change it, right? That it keeps some people out of the category, it allows other people to be in the category, right? You can think about large corporations versus craft players, etc. So circling back, because I think this will tag in here, is if you go above 6.9%, it's again a different tax bracket, right? Well, you also cannot put cider, this is about 2 years ago, you couldn't put cider over 6.9% in a 12-ounce can. You could put it in a 375 milliliter, a 500 milliliter, or a 750 milliliter, right? So wine sizes that wines come in, right?
Right.
So we looked at it and we said, you talked about how do we invent new items? How do you come up with new items? We looked at it and we said, okay, we want to create a higher ABV cider, but you can't go above 6.9. Otherwise, you're going to go into this tax bracket. We're not interested in going into glass, right? Because at the very beginning, we founded the company on aluminum.
Right.
So we found sourcing for a 375 milliliter can. And for those who aren't in the beverage world, that's about 12.6, 12.7 ounces. Okay. So if you put a can right next to a 12-ounce can right next to a 375 can, you'd have to put them right next to each other to notice the difference in height.
Okay.
Now the diameter is not different. Okay. So the circumference of it is not different, just the height.
Okay.
Okay. So that bodes well for packaging, right? Cardboard around it, because you're not going wider, you just go a little bit taller. You can solve for that. So when we're coming out with this, we went, okay, we got it. We found 375 ounce cans that can be printed. We don't put wraps on our cans, wraps being plastic, because you see a lot of those come out and you're like, oh, this is a new release, it's got plastic wrap on it. That's great, except for that now you've taken an infinitely recyclable item and you cannot recycle it. You have to remove the plastic. And it's about 1% if you're taking, again, the data is close, it's not completely accurate, but about 1% if you have flawed, basically aluminum content in your recycling, it ruins that entire batch.
Okay.
Right? So people are going to put those cans into recycling and now you've ruined it. Right? That's the whole sustainability. It's the same thing with stickers. You know, eventually they're going to invent stickers that are recyclable and we'll be able to do that. We don't have that yet.
Okay.
Right? And so when people are, and it's great, you know, sure. But I think it's not great because you've taken a product that's recyclable by putting a plastic wrap around it and you no longer can recycle that product.
So I'm on your website and it's scrolling, cans are scrolling past me.
Yeah.
Right.
They're great,
and
right?
Yeah. I like the artwork and we'll get to the artwork, but one of them, of course, it's not going to scroll past me now, but I see a couple of them with the higher, the Excelsiors with the higher. Yeah. Those cans on the website don't look any taller. So am I missing? So is this just for artwork purposes?
No. So about a year ago, right? About a year or less ago, the law changed. So we started it. We found 375 cans. I'll speed this one up. We found those 375 cans. We made this higher ABV cider, which was the original Imperial cider. So we were the first Imperial cider in a can, as far as I know, in the nation. Okay. Now, obviously, we've had a lot of people follow us because they looked at it. And this thing is, no pun intended, right? If you look at the can, Excelsior is space themed. It's a rocket ship. Like it is like, you know, as they say, it's going outer space. It's crazy. And so, you know, right now, actually, it's I don't want to turn people away from it. You should definitely buy it because it's an incredible product. And you should also support other people. But like, if you've never tried it, try it. It is now the top 5-6-pack in the entire Pacific Northwest.
Really?
So we're talking like about like Corona level in sales, you know? Wow. I mean, it's incredible. So we're super excited about that, you know, and we don't even have a lot of distribution on it to the degree to which we will. So if you don't find it now, give us a couple months. We're working on it for you. So we created that. Then the law changed, right? So then the law changed for the 375s and it went, you know, 375, 12.7 ounce, right? Slightly taller cans to 12 ounce. Okay. That allowed other people to enter the category. Great. Competition is healthy. That's important, right? And so you know, you can look out there and you can know that Schilling started that category, the Imperial category, and everyone else has followed suit. And they're smart too, right? They looked at the data and they saw how successful it was. Now we've created a brand family, right? We're the first ones to create an Imperial brand family, right? So if you know, casual beer drinkers out there, think about Voodoo Ranger from New Belgium, right? They've created a brand family around that, or the Thing series, Hayes Little Thing from Sierra Nevada, or from, you know, a state that won't be named on the east side of the state, right? Deschutes, they have their Fresh series, right? And they've created these series around them. And so we created the Excelsior series, Excelsior meaning ever upward, right? So the connotation of the ABV, it's also super fun to say, like, you can't tell me I'm wrong on that, you know? And, you know, Stan Lee, right? I mean, come on, you know?
So, You mentioned Imperial. Why? Help me out here. Why is that? What's that?
So Imperial connotates a double of the standard, right, of ABV, and it also means things different in beer. If you're looking at a double IPA, you're looking at double the hops, double the malt. So you've increased the alcohol content through fermentation. Okay. And that's actually we are sourcing bitter, sweet, bitter, sharp apples from where they originated, right? For this, so you get that tannin mouthfeel, right? So we've tried it. We blind taste tested this next to some amazing ciders that are, $25 to $30 a bottle, and people are like, they'll choose Excelsior, or they'll say, hey, you know what? This one is almost as good. What is this? Well, it costs you like, $2 instead of 20, right? For the same amount of liquid.
Let's talk about your cans for a second.
Yeah.
So are you guys printing the cans? Are you buying the blanks and printing them in-house, or do you buy them printed from somewhere else?
Yeah, so there's two companies mainly that do all aluminum beverage can printing. There's crown and there's ball. And ball from your ball, you will recognize them, right? And if you look on the cans, you actually see a little crown, or it says ball in cursive on every single can. It's always fun to see who makes your cans. So there are different plants, can manufacturing plants around the U.S. And we actually have some. There's one here in Tumwater. There's another ball plant that's just up the road from where our warehouse is. And they print them. So they actually have these plates. Do you want to hear about how the whole process works?
Well, no, the reason being is, so is the ball plant is there one still kind of in Auburn off of 167?
Yeah, that's a small facility for them, but yes. Yeah.
I used to, long time ago, had to go in there for work purposes.
Okay.
And it's really noisy when a forklift knocks over a stack. Have you been in there?
I've not been in that facility, but I know what stacked cans look like, and I know what that sounds like.
This guy turned his pallet, he was driving his forklift, and he had it stacked up, and he turned it to, and he knocked. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been in a noisier place when all that fell apart. Yeah. So you're ordering those from, we'll just say Ball, whatever. So they're doing the printing. So you guys don't have to do that.
Yeah, and there's actually, it's really interesting. I think this is actually fascinating. It's kind of like how the world works, right? And how how it's made, So we create the artwork, right, on the template, digitally, and we do all that in house. And so it's this is not I'm not trying to shout out for myself, but a lot of that kind of comes from my head in our design team, right? I'll say, hey, I'm thinking about this, and the draft and the space helmet and that kind of stuff. So it's just super exciting, to be a part of that. It's what I love coming to work for.
Sure.
And so we'll create that digitally, put that on a template, and there's actually a facility in Washington, in the great state of Washington, that people fly into, right? They'll fly from all over the U.S., and they'll do a pilot can. And the reason they do a pilot can is to work out all the kinks. So they'll actually print 1, 2, 3, and you'll be able to see it. I don't know if listeners will be able to see it, but this is actually a brand new product that'll be coming out. Excelsior Red Glow. So this and you'll see the top of this portion, right? You have the 12-ounce normal, and this is actually printed on a 16-ounce template. So you've got this just bare aluminum at the top, right?
Right.
So you go to that facility and they print those cans, and you can look at the colors. You say that color's not right, and once you finalize that, they have they plate it. Basically, they put the ink in, they do all that, and now you've got this plate that goes to Ball or Crown, and you have agreed on the colors. You agreed on the pressures that plate puts on that can, right? And now you've got the perfect can, and you can see what it looks like when it wraps and touches in the back, so there's continuity there. I think it's fascinating.
It is fascinating, and it's maddening when you're trying to put something together and it doesn't line up right. Yeah. So, all right, let's not put the clutch in all the way and grind my gears a little bit here.
Sure.
Let's talk about the Excelsior line, because I'm getting a kick out of the cans as they scroll by, and you kind of teased another one coming. So I guess you can share more about that.
Absolutely.
So let's do this. What's on the horizon for you guys, new product wise, that you can disclose?
Oh, I'm an open book, man. First of all. Yeah. I'm pretty. I
don't want to put you on the spot.
No. I'm okay. Is anyone who gets to work with me or has the whatever you want to say, I work with, they'll know. They know.
Okay. All right.
So the fun thing is we started with Excelsior, right? It's the first imperial cider in a can in the nation, right?
Right.
And now we've got a lot of people who have noticed, and we already had put into motion. After it launched, we said, okay, where do we need to go with this line? Like, this is incredible. Let's build a brand. Let's build a family of giraffes, right? Let's put some space helmets on them. Let's send them in outer space, right?
Okay.
How do we differentiate? Why is it important? What's the benefit for, the consumer, right? Like, it's not just to innovate, but let's do it right. And so, we created this cider that is just a really high ABV, good tasting, just apple forward cider that didn't exist. And then we said, okay, what have we done well in the past? We've done fruited ciders pretty well,
Okay.
Okay, well, let's investigate that. Where's a gap in the portfolio? Also, why would someone just want a fruited version? Like, I don't want to release Excelsior at the same ABV. right? Like that's a waste of your time, right?
Okay.
And I don't want to waste the consumer's time. So instead of saying, okay, well, all the Excelsior items are going to be the same ABV, right? Let's let someone else play that game. That's not interesting to us. Let's kick it up. Like let's turn it to, we didn't turn it to 11. That would be that'd be a hot cider, right? But we turned it up to 9.1%.
Right.
9.1. So now you look at it and you say, okay, well, first of all, if you're drinking Excelsior, you're in it for the experience, right? And I'm not advocating for drinking, right?
Right.
You know, you do you. I respect that. But if you're getting a 9.1 cider, you have a goal in mind, right? You are on a journey, right?
Yes.
And you are going to take that rocket ship there. And we're just going to help put some fuel in the tank, right? So 9.1 cider, mango, right? So that's what we did. So we released Excelsior Mango, 9.1. And the fun thing is I really like it because myself and like a couple other people, we write the stories on the cans, you know, so it's like I get to, instead of just being, you know, in data all day, that's my creative outlet. You know, they still let me do it. We're going to hire up for it now. And I'll be sad to, you know, let that go, but it's important.
Maybe you should apply for that job.
Yeah, I should. You know what? I'll tell the head of marketing that I want it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and so now the next one, right, which I think is what people are probably more interested in than me babbling, is we want to release something else, but we didn't just want to say, you know what, I'm going to launch this cider and we're just going to put a different fruit in it. We're going to keep it the same ABV. Again, not interesting, right?
Right.
I want people to expect whatever Schilling's doing, it's worth checking out. You know, like, sure, we can make another, and I'm not knocking IPAs. We can make another IPA for a beer company, right? And we can throw different hops in it. It's not interesting. Let's do something that really changes things, you know? So that higher ABV and fruit for mango. Now what we've done is we've actually, people should look this up if they're listening, right? Multitask. Don't do it while you're driving. But do it afterward. Make a mental note. So if you crack open an apple, right, on the inside, it's pretty much all the same color, right? It's kind of like that white color, right, if you will. We've known about them for a while, but we weren't sure how to do it. So it was kind of something we thought about for a really long time. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if? And now that if is a reality. You crack these apples, they're called red flesh apples, okay? You crack them open, well, you're familiar, and you look on the inside, and it's actually red. It's red on the inside. Like, that's crazy. You know, when people look at that, you look it up on the internet, and you go, nah, there's no way. And then you start to research, you're like, oh my goodness, there's actual red.
It's real.
Yeah, it's real. So you think about it, right? You press that juice. What color is that juice? Right?
It's red.
It's red. And so what we did is we're really excited about it. And I mean, my voice probably, intonation probably hasn't told you.
You're a little dry.
Yeah,
I'll be honest with you.
I'll work on it. I'll drink some cider. So we released this one called Red Glow, right? Because, I thought red flesh didn't make sense on a cider can, but people weren't going to be interested in drinking a red flesh, whatever.
Right, yeah, that's a little low.
Yeah. So Red Glow, right? And thinking about different backgrounds for the planets, right? So Excelsior is kind of, we blasted off from Earth and we're on the moon, right? And Mango is, we've gone to another galaxy. And then Red Glow is kind of that Mars connotation, right? That red giant connotation. And so we actually we've sourced from a local Washington-based company out in the Yakima Valley, these red flesh apples, right? And they're called Lucy Glow apples. GLO, right? So Lucy Glow apples. And I would look them up because they're beautiful apples. They're beautiful, beautiful apples. And that's why it's called Red Glow. Red GLO as a nod back to that. And you'll see, we always put Easter eggs on our cans. And I know it's not a visual, it's a auditory experience. But if you look on the cans, you'll see little Easter eggs, right? So like on one of our cans, we had put a nod to another can that we had created, right? On these ones, you've got the same little astronaut, this fat little astronaut. He's got like a little belly. He's like a little tiny guy. And he's on all the cans. And then you've also got this little alien is on the Mango one. And he's different, he's different colors. And then also on the Red Glow, this is the one I'm really excited about, is kind of a nod. I hope that Apple doesn't sue us. And, I looked with legal and we should be good. But we put Lucy in the sky next to diamonds.
Well, that won't be Apple. That'll be.
Oh yeah,
wait. Who owns the Beatles catalog now? Whoever.
That's right. I thought. Yeah, it's not Apple. It's,
I thought Michael Jackson bought it.
Yeah, that might.
Yeah. Anyway,
estate is.
Let's not give him any ideas.
Yeah. So now you've got, and now I'll show you really close here, but you've got this Lucy, which is the trademark visual for these apples.
Right.
And so we wanted to work it in.
That's very cool.
We wanted to work it in, and it's also worked in the story and those kinds of things. So it's just fun stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the new release. So we've got that one. You want to hear about some other releases?
Yeah, let's hear.
Cool. So we got the Excelsior series is growing, and I will, for anyone who's listening, it will continue to grow.
Okay.
I got some things rattling around this peanut shell head of mine, so we're good to go there. And then outside of that, we've got if you're familiar with any of the other products, we have this one called Local Legend, right? And it's around the idea of the Sasquatch, right? And instead of naming it Sasquatch cider, which might connotate, some fur, some grit, and some, I wasn't interested in that. So Local Legend, we actually have a 12-pack of that coming out. So we're really excited about that. And we're actually pricing it in line with national cider companies, right? Companies who come from big conglomerates so that people can have a higher quality heirloom cider in a 12-pack, right? So we're excited about that. And then we have, what else do we have coming out? We also have this new lineup, actually this brand new, essentially offshoot of Schilling, which is a brand called Waveline. And some people might be semi-familiar. We had a seltzer line there for a little while, and we said, hey, we could fight the seltzer game and really try and figure that out. It's not really who we are as a company, right? There's no innovation in that. And that's not to knock seltzer companies. Great. If you want to drink seltzer, drink seltzer. It just wasn't as interesting for us, right? Same idea as sure, you could release a cider and have different variations of the same ABV, and we threw fruit X in it. Fine.
Right.
We launched a hard yerba mate.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll unpack that together, right? So yerba mate, obviously, people are familiar with some different brands. We're actually launching a non-alcoholic one. We could talk about that, but I'm excited about the alcohol version. It's called Waveline Hard Yerba Mate, and it's got, again, better imagery, more fun imagery. I like to say, so as a wine base, right? You remember Four Locos?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not fully Four Locos. We're like 2.0 Locos. Okay.
Okay.
So it's a little less loco, a little bit more craft, right? And what I mean by that is we have caffeine naturally occurring in it because it comes from yerba mate, right? So yerba mate has natural caffeine, and it's 4.2% alcohol, right? And so we created this around the yerba mate concept. So now you've got a different drinking occasion where you say, hey, you know what? I've had some drinks. Yeah, maybe switch to water. That's a great call if you're driving. Stop drinking, sober up, don't drive buzz, right? Absolutely.
Right.
But if you're like, hey, I'm going to save space. I'm going to be here all night. I want to keep going. And I've had a couple Excelsiors, and that's really taking me up to a next level, right? I'm out in space somewhere. You want to come back a little bit? Great. Drink a Waveline. You get a little caffeine boost in there, And that's exciting for us because you cannot legally do that if it's malt-based. If it's a malt-based product, beer, you cannot put caffeine in it. If it's naturally occurring, you cannot put synthetic caffeine in it, right? Which could be derived from oil or whatever, right? I mean, legitimately. But you can if it's naturally occurring. And because it's naturally occurring from the yerba mate, right? The organic yerba mate, boom, done.
Well, the thing is, as the can scroll by, the other thing I'm noticing is that it's only a 90-calorie beverage.
100%, yeah. And we can't legally say it's low-cal because
But let's be real, it's more low-cal than most ciders are going to be.
100%, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or most beers.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And it's exciting. So the tagline that I'm excited about for that one is, you can't say energy, right? Because Red Bull, they kind of have that cornered for legal purposes. You also can't say that legally from an alcohol standpoint, being in an alcohol category. So it's unleash the funergy.
The funergy.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, and just keeping it fun. That's who we are. We like to have a good time. So.
Right.
But then you're also like, I see what they did there. They can't say it, so they said it. I get it.
Right. Well, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
ciders are something we don't typically start our mornings with. Americans typically start their mornings with, coffee.
Right.
And yerba mate, caffeine, coffee,
Yep.
caffeine. Are you a coffee guy?
I have never had a cup of coffee in my life, which is strange to people.
I gotta admit, that's a weird one, man.
Yeah, my mom's never really had coffee. My dad really enjoys coffee. My girlfriend really enjoys coffee. I get it. It's just not for me. Maybe as I mature, as we, my journey of life, I'll dabble. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're not the coffee guy.
Not the coffee guy.
The girlfriend is a coffee person.
She enjoys her coffee. Yeah.
What does she enjoy?
So I found this place, obviously in Washington, small batch coffee. I can't remember the name of it, unfortunately. But some of that medium, more, and again, from a non-coffee drinker.
No, it's okay. You're doing good.
I'm faking it, right?
You're faking. Oh, don't say that.
Yeah, well, I'm in sales, so I can sell it, right? We actually had a cold brew line. We had a cold brew company. Yeah. Not even the cider. We actually had a cold brew company that we had for a while. We sold that off anyway. I think she likes the medium roast, more like chocolatey, like deep flavor stuff, versus like light roast. She'll also do she likes like shots in her coffee when she goes. Which is espresso, right?
Espresso, yeah.
Nailed it. Look at me. I know coffee.
Yeah, it's almost like you've had it before.
Yeah, exactly. No, she definitely enjoys it. She's likes her cup in the morning. Can function without it. Probably functions better with it, like a lot of people I've heard. Which might be my reason for not doing it. Is like I don't. I've also never had a glass of milk. So if we really want to get weird, yeah.
Wow.
But I love cheese.
Interesting.
I'm all about dairy products. It's just
that's interesting.
And vanilla.
I gotta say,
I love vanilla milkshakes, man. I had one yesterday.
So why don't you drink milk?
It's just weird to me. I think when I was like a kid going to the fair and participating in the fair, I just got weirded out by just the idea. I mean, not trying to be grotesque, but what was the first person thinking? They were probably thinking they saw someone nursing on it and figured out the connection. But also, like, what was the first person thinking when they were getting milk from a cow?
Yeah. Okay.
Or like, those udders. I'm a little weirded out by it,
Okay. Yeah. I mean, when you put it like that, I can understand.
But also it's just so much. It's so much to have a glass of milk,
Okay.
Like if we're talking like an ounce, like sure, man, I'm in. But for me, milkshakes, ice cream sandwiches, I love them.
Okay. Yeah. So okay. I love your guys' website, by the way.
It's pretty fun, right? They've done our marketing team. Mike Garrett did a revamp of the website, and he's just done a fantastic job. It's fun and interactive, and I love it too because you get to see immediately when you get on the website, you get to see the cans scroll by, and you're like, okay, this is different. Like why, this is a cider company. Like what are they? There's a voice, there's brand recognition. People don't sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, my favorite cider. I can't remember the name of it, and I'd be like, well, like. Does it have a flamingo on it? They're like, yeah, that's the one. Like, oh, okay, cool, that's us. Or they'll be like, yeah, I can't remember. It's got like this giraffe in in a space helmet. And they're like, yeah, that's my favorite cider. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, we make that, and it's called Excelsior. So I just think that there's a connection there, right? Because sometimes you go to the store and you're like, yeah, what is that can? And you're like, oh, I can't remember it. And this one, you're like, how can I forget that? It's not even about remembering. You can't forget it.
So I just stumbled on something on your website that I had not seen before. And remember when I probably told you this when we talked on the phone, I don't do a lot of preparation because I like to have that sense of wonderment.
Sure.
Like, oh, wow.
Sure.
You have a recipe book.
Oh, yeah. Amanda, our director of creative, created this recipe book. And I'm hoping our marketing team is growing like crazy right now. And they're doing some really fantastic stuff that hopefully we'll get to see later this year. For the holidays, she created this recipe book for like Thanksgiving, and we actually had tearaways where we'd have stacks of our cider and hey brine your turkey in this, make this way, London dry or whatever it was. Yeah, it's fantastic with baking, and so I think long term there's we're going to have some opportunity around, having that available, whether that's for download for people or we're really growing that.
People pair beverages with food all the time, right? And so I'm looking here. You got the Schilling Hard Cider turkey brine, and got a mulled hard cider. That's pretty common.
Yeah.
But then we've got cider bread with maple butter, caramelized apple mac and cheese.
Yeah, I haven't made that one.
That one looks interesting. I'll pass on the squash because I'll just drink the can instead of putting it with squash.
There you go.
But no, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that we leaned into, and it's interesting because you kind of grow in different ways, right? As a company, and the first thing was, well, we have to be sustainable. We have to be able to actually pay the bills and all those things, right? And then becomes what are the things we're good at? Let's double down on that. What are the things we want to be good at? Okay, let's research that. Early on, as a way for selling into the on-premise, which is like bars and restaurants, right? You drink the drink on the premise. So we would make cocktail recipes. So we actually had a bunch of cocktail recipes, and if people have been fans for Schilling for a while, they'll remember that on the backs of our cans we actually had cocktail recipes.
Okay.
We have since moved away from that to the storytelling portion of it, right? But we will eventually have more cocktail recipes there. Like we've paired Excelsior with some whiskeys, and it's just really brings out this whole other character in both products. We've done one of mine. I'm not sure. You'll be my litmus test on this one. One that was called Paloma Escobar.
Okay.
And it was a grapefruit, right? Yeah, I thought you'd like it. Yeah. So I came up with that one. I thought that was pretty funny.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like
pretty
that.
Good. So anyway, so we had that one. Paloma Escobar was a grapefruit, cider cocktail mix. We've done some like gin-based cocktails. So yeah, we have this whole cocktail book that'll eventually make it up on the website, and so it's super fun, and people don't think about that. But we're not the first to do it, but it was just exciting to explore that. We had one called One Way Ticket, and it was with our pineapple passion fruit cider, which is called Passport, right? So it's kind of a play on that travel theme.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it was
it
was with rum, right? And it was obviously like a higher kind of hit you, drink, and that's why One Way Ticket, right? It wasn't round trip.
Wasn't round trip.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, we always, to wrap this up, to respect your time and all that, here's my get out of free jail card, which is what I say at every episode. Yeah. What didn't I ask you that we should have talked about? Did I miss something?
No, I appreciate it. I think we covered the really fun things, What I would encourage people, if they're interested in Schilling, reach out to us. We love hearing from people. If we're doing something you would love to see more of, great, tell us. We're always open to that. Right. I'm excited personally to have had the opportunity to just talk about how we, I don't want to say invented because that's like no one had ever done it before, but we really started the imperial cider category and, have solidified that as a brand building thing. And I'm excited. The most exciting release I'm thinking about this next year, we also have a Moscow Mule cider that's coming out. So we kind of did the cocktail mix for you. It'll come in large 19.2 cans. So those will be coming out. Those will hit grocery stores here in March. But the one I'm the most excited about is Excelsior is amazing. Don't get me wrong. But like we elevated above Excelsior with this brand new release of this Red Glow with those red flesh apples. It's the idea of large scale bringing the terroir concept into cider making with things that aren't available to everyone, right? You can't have fresh pressed juice outside the Pacific Northwest in the volume that we're talking about, right? A lot of people have to bring it from the Pacific Northwest in concentrate, reconstitute it to make their cider. Great, if that's all you can do, I get it, right? But that's why we started here, and that's the thing that's exciting about it for me is having access to these beautiful Lucy Glow apples and having that be, just, in the same state, a couple hours away where they're pressing it and it's in, our tanks the same day. Like that it just wows me, still. And I've done this for, better part of 9 years. I'm still excited about that. And I'm genuinely still excited about that, So yeah, I don't know. That's it. Like I'm just really pumped about Excelsior. I'm just pumped about the new release of it and just getting to grow that brand and getting to connect with people through, like the idea of drinking, the idea of
when is when is it supposed to hit shelves?
Right around the beginning of March. Yeah. So you'll see it right around the beginning of March. You should see it in a fair amount of stores. I don't have the total count right now, but I'm really excited. You should be able to find it,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then let's circle back to, we're going to have to talk about Oregon for a second.
Oh, sure.
But your tap room, so you've got two, but the website indicates there's one currently under renovations in Auburn. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we grew, so we had plans we had a cider house, we had a tap room at our headquarters. I recently had a gentleman who I'd worked with in the industry for a long time, and he came, and he hadn't been here in probably a year and a half. Not a long time for a facility change. He was genuinely floored and used a lot of expletives, and is a church-going gentleman. And so it was fun to just watch this just pop up in his mind. He's just like, what? We grew so rapidly that the space that was originally dedicated for the tap room here has been filled up with people's desks. And I think that that's a really important thing, and maybe one day we'll be able to get back to it as we get the backspace and maybe, some other space around here. But as it currently stands, we don't have the tap room here for that reason, because we've been able to we doubled in staff last year. In 2021.
So how many people are working for Schilling then?
We're right around the 50 mark. That's not including that's including the cider house managers, but not the full staff. So if we're including that, we're probably closer to 60, 65.
Okay. All right.
So still pretty small. Where I think I was gone for a week on vacation, and then came back, and there were 2 new people who I'd never met, and so it was just really interesting. It's we're kind of this company, but we don't, we will but now I know them, and it's been 2 weeks. It's I know them well,
Right.
But yeah, we doubled in staff last year, and we hired 10 people already in the first 2 weeks of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Really exciting, just to be able to provide that for people, and not we're doing them a great service, but there's a lot of really bad work environments, and to be the difference maker, in that when, it's exciting.
All right. Well, anything else that we should make sure we say?
If you get a chance, go to the cider house, check it out. They're lovely people. They're just the best. And if you get in, if you're super excited about this stuff, hit us up. We always love talking about it, and go out and get Excelsior. Just give it a go. Some people are turned off by the giraffe. Some people don't love that type of branding. They're it's going to be cheap and whatever. I can tell you that I put this cider up in a blind test against most ciders out there. And I think you're going to be surprised if you haven't ever tried it. I know that there's, beers that I haven't tried because of that. And now I try them and I'm oh man, I love this. Are you kidding? Why was I doing that to myself? So give it a try. Give it a try.
Okay. And we'll put some links to your website and all that in the show notes so people can take a look at the site and that quickly and, find out. Well, I will ask this last question. So drop some names of places where your ciders are available in Washington.
Absolutely. All major grocery chains. So you've got your Safeways, you got your QFCs, you got your Fred Meyers. You've got, we're in a bunch more Walmarts now, Whole Foods, PCC, Met Market. Trader Joe's is a great place, especially with our seasonals. Trader Joe's has been awesome for us. Some of your local convenience stores, honestly, and if you don't see it, ask for it, because we're working hard out there, and we love any help.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you doing this. This was a lot of fun for me, and I'm gonna go. I think I might actually drive to the store today and grab some Excelsior and give it a shot, because I haven't tried it. And I'm gonna go check it out.
Yeah. Well, let me know. I want your honest feedback.
I will. I'll give you some feedback.
All right. Awesome, Scott.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you very much. Bye.
All right.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.